everyone, I'm Chow and you're watching COVID Conversations, where we discuss how people have been coping with COVID-19. Today we have Cai Yinzhou with us. He's the director of Citizens Adventure. It's one of the organizations that has put together the COVID Migrant Support Coalition. Hi Yinzhou, how are you doing?
Hi, Chow. Still alive, hanging in there.
Oh no, are you very tired?
I call myself an armchair activist, just
no.
sitting on the chair and coordinating stuff now.
I'm sure it's so much work right now, and we were sharing about all the things that you were involved in.
Yeah, we try. We respond to where the needs are. So I think for us, it's always, if there is a need, we do more, and then we think of how we do better. So right now, I think the coalition has become 170 people, last I checked. And that's a lot of people to manage.
It definitely is. So maybe if you could just share a bit more about what the coalition is working on right now and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, so we started on day 1 of circuit breaker, and I think that's about day 11 or day 12 now. I've lost track of time.
Yeah, no worries. I think everyone has this circuit breaker really warps your sensing of what time it is also.
Yeah, time slows down. So when we first started, it was 3 main pillars of work. The first was on immediate needs.
Okay.
So we have a casework team that filters the issues that come through to us. Most of the time, it's workers who share that they have issues with getting food because either they're not paid or their employer is not able to provide, or sometimes they are in faraway places like the dormitories in very ulu parts of Singapore. And so many of them, they can't go out to get food because, there are requirements, there are restrictions, like the number of people that can go out to buy on behalf of others. So for us, that was our initial wave of queries on I need help to provide food because I don't have money, because I can't access it.
Yeah,
and so our casework team will process it and will have a food department that provides for them.
Wow. So the coalition first began because there was this need for food, getting food to these migrant workers, right?
Yeah, it wasn't directly. I mean, the food and essential supplies were the main pillar of immediate needs, but we also had the other 2 pillars of mental health and learning and education.
How did the coalition first come together?
Well, so Isabel from Migrant XP, Deepa from It's Raining Raincoats, and our friends from Singapore Migrant Friends. Shout out to Mamun, Angie, and Bilal. So Mamun is stuck in Bangladesh because he went back to get married. So we have the 2 IC. Yeah. So he was supposed to come back in April. He's the leader of the group. But now, we are helping to work with him from Bangladesh. So, I mean, for us, it was really a prioritizing of where the needs were. I mean, food and access to food is a basic need. But beyond that, it was really also the need for looking at the mental health, as well as the meaningful time and engagement that they could have inside their dormitories, especially during lockdown, potentially. So when we first started, it was really to look at building these resources that would help them to look at all these things.
Did the coalition first come together because of the lockdowns, when it just started to, circuit breaker just rolled out and just things started close?
Yeah, we heard murmurings of it like the weekend before. I mean, companies were really telling their workers that because they don't have work because they are non-essential workers. So it was really about how they could get over that difficult period for the month. So some of their employers would negotiate with them, I can't pay you because, I don't have cash flow problems as well. And some of them, I mean, the local businesses especially do take quite a big hit. And many of them, the workers especially, they really are also struggling with not being able to know their rights or know the arrangements of subsidies that the government has provided these companies. Yeah. So when the companies, tell them, if you're not working, we can't pay you, these might be arrangements that they would not question.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when that was told to them, I mean, the question is then how can I afford food if I'm staying in a dorm? If my employer doesn't provide for me food, but, how do I get access to it? So that was the response on day 1.
There seems to be quite a lot going on. So what are the main problems that the migrant workers are currently facing?
Well, so I mean, being far away from home,
Mm-hmm.
and also in a place that you're not so familiar with in terms of the laws, the
Mm.
healthcare, and just the uncertainty of being away from family as well. Being like the male of the house, a young prime of your life, you want to be responsible for your family as well. In many of the countries where they come from, the COVID crisis is happening there as well.
Yeah.
So just the uncertainty can really kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them could also be thinking of idleness. When you're not occupied meaningfully doing anything, the idleness will get to you, right? So it's really about the frame of the conditions they live in as well. How do you feel safe from COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not when you're in a room with 12 other people at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are very concerned about that at the moment, especially in the recent weeks when there's so much media, so much discussion about their living conditions. Maybe, do you know if there's anything that you could share with us more about how these accommodations were before?
Mm. So, I mean, if you look at the design of dormitories, they're also informed by the salary these workers get. So, starting pay ranges from like 500 bucks to 600 bucks. It's really not a lot. A lot of them have to take up agent fees to come to Singapore to work. So, imagine you take up all that loan and then you come here. You really need to spend as little as possible on your monthly expenses.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you find a place for like a couple of $100 a month? One of the ways is in these purpose-built dormitories, and typically these dormitories are also not designed for like long-term living. Most of them are thousands of people in a very small, in a relatively small room. But the idea is that it's kind of a place where they rest after a long day
Yeah.
at work, and they're not really expected to spend like the whole day inside, right? And that's not what the dormitories would be designed for as well. There's no amenities, there's no entertainment. It's normally in the fringe where we have the recreation centers, where we have the cinemas, but many of these are also designed for the workers to have some leisure time on their off days. But all
Yeah.
in all, the actual dormitory itself, I would say actually because of how low wages the workers get, they can't really afford much. It is something that is barely you just need a bed to stay in, really. So
Mm-hmm.
for many of them, the cramped conditions are also a result of that.
Yeah.
And the design is also informed by the structural inequalities of the society that we live in. So
Yeah.
the huge gap, right, in perception with our houses, our homes, versus the conditions they live in, it's almost worlds apart.
It is. It's unfortunately the case, and today happened to be one of the biggest number of cases reported. I think there's a 942 cases reported today, and majority of them happen to be migrant workers. Is there anything that has been done to try and mitigate the numbers from rising?
Yeah, yeah. So the government is definitely actively trying to contain the numbers. We have the decatment exercise that are happening across the island, the relocation of populations of workers to kind of disperse them from the purpose-built dormitories, especially those that are under lockdown. The
Yep.
idea is if you spread them out and you disperse them out and be able to isolate them at least in smaller numbers in one
Mhm.
room, at least the contagion of COVID can be stemmed when you are able to disperse. But I think it's also looking at the stats of infection, the consideration for how the symptoms of COVID take a while to manifest,
Yeah.
some without symptoms at all. So it's very hard to say how much the real numbers of infection are,
Mm-hmm.
which is why the government is also ramping up the swab testing. They're sending the doctors and nurses into the dorms. They also opened up the public health preparedness clinics to allow employers to send workers who are not well
Mm-hmm.
to see the doctors there. I think there are a lot of uncertainty as to the contingency measures that are in place because the situation changes every day, and like
Mm-hmm.
COVID, it's really an invisible enemy.
Yeah.
And I think the only way that we can really deal with it is, with concrete actions of
Mm-hmm.
disbursement and also looking at how to free up spaces fast enough to unlock these spaces to allow the dispersal of the workers from their existing conditions, existing concentration of workers in one place.
Yeah, I think that's something that the government is actively working on right now. And it's a huge concern for a lot of people because I think there are a lot of Singaporeans who do care about this situation. And as you have so many volunteers on your end as well, how does the coalition come in place when it comes to supporting the migrant workers?
So every department that springs up is really from a need. I think we respond to the first need of food, the basic needs of food and essential supplies. But eventually, we're also moving towards the need of like mental health, education, and engagement.
Yeah.
We also went to the need of employers and dormitory operators because we saw that many of them didn't really have the resources to kind of contain the workers inside for this extended period of time.
Yeah.
So it's really about supporting employers and dormitory operators as well, and recognizing them as the direct welfare provider, of these workers who are inside. I think many of them are quite misunderstood. Many of the perceptions of dormitories, because of how cramped the conditions are, the bad guys are really always portrayed as the operators. So I think for us, it's also learning to support them through initiatives like the one that we have, a campaign called Majulah Belanja. How do we treat the workers to really boost their morale? So we're asking employers to tell us, what they want to get to treat their employers, and to also get the public to match what they want to treat. So in this way, we really work together to boost the morale of the workers who are inside, and really to help support the employers and operators at this point of time.
I think that's so important because people don't really know what the operators' resources are also, and they don't know how strained they are on their end. So I think coming together and bringing the community together with Majalah Belanja is quite a impressive move as well. And I think it's very important about caring for their mental health because this is something that might not be immediately noticeable, especially in the media. People just talk about the number of cases and the living conditions, but not really how they feel. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely also like the statistical perspective of COVID that we get inundated with. We always see it as stats, but I think when you actually speak to the workers, like I was sharing about how TikTok is really a platform where many of them are on. I think there are so many videos, of them in the dormitories, in the hospitals, and getting swabs. That you really feel the kind of isolation that they must be feeling in these conditions. And I think for us, it has always been responding to their needs, right? So these are needs that all humans would have, if they were going through a similar situation. And I think one of the reflection is always like, if I was in that position and I was overseas, I wish someone did the same for me, right? So it's really about like responding as humans, not so much of responding as like, oh, it's our duty and responsibility. I mean, it is, but it's really about innately who you are and, what do you see through this situation? Is it really a responsibility or finger pointing game? But it's really a time through crisis that everyone's solidarity will truly stand up. Yeah.
It's so lovely to hear, really. And I was looking at the website, the coalition website, to see how you guys have all these programs to just bring people together. How has the response been so far?
Yeah, so I mean, responses have been always up and down. I think when the numbers are rising, people get a bit edgy. Like it's not something you think of like learning a new skill when everyone around you in your room is getting infected, right? So we are trying to also work with the operators to actually get their workers into these programs and to look at ways to incentivize them to learn and to get their mind off things. I think one of the feedback that operators gave us was that workers have a fixed like working schedule every day, right? So they go to the work site, they start working, and they know what's expected of them to do. But suddenly they are given this like freedom of not having a schedule, and it's like after school, after you end school, right? Like you get out your last certificate, and then you have nothing to do, right? You tend to really get restless or idle. And I think what we can support is looking at activities that are meaningful and also helpful in helping them regulate their emotions, the anxiety that they might be facing, and also like to make the best out of the situation lah. So I think that's where we're really coming from, and I think the uptake from migrant workers is picking up, and many of them that have gone through these programs, there was this kind of relaxation exercise program that we did, and one of the worker, like it was so effective, he actually dozed off. So
He really relaxed.
yeah, it was. Yeah, I wish I could do that right now. So tech, although it's quite impossible to replace, but I think in crisis, it is a lever for good as well. So it's really about, organizing stuff from, the armchair activists, right? The traditional way of like the keyboard warrior. But I think using that as a force for good, it's really being something more and doing something meaningful with our times online, with our times at home, and also just being aware of the situation. I think not many of us might see the severity of really the COVID situation in the dormitories, in our migrant worker friends' midst.
So all your volunteers, right, are they on the ground? How are they rolling out these programs?
So most of us actually from our houses.
Okay.
The only ground programs that we do are distributions. So for example, today we distributed masks to reusable masks from MOM to 176 factory converted dormitories.
Wow.
So these are dormitories that have very small number of people, but because they are in the factories, they're not really visible. They are really out of sight, out of mind. So I mean, we were given the opportunity actually to help MOM with the distribution of these, and we activated volunteer drivers to work out the distribution and send out the masks. So we also have a warehouse that we just had the permits for to operate. So we are actually sending in the orders. We had a team that was just doing online shopping, calling out suppliers, and like, I want 1,000 of this, and that. So that's a kind of scale that we are moving towards, not just 1,000, but a few thousands of the items that are essential to them. And I think that's key in scaling as well. It's a humanitarian effort. It's not so much of like, I'll give you, the luxurious stuff, but it's really about how do I help sustain and also help them feel a sense of security and safety by being well resourced. So these are the perceptions that we are focusing on. And I think the other thing that we want to look at is also how do we help the workers who are relocating possibly feel like in a new place, they are settled down, and the move is always difficult, moving to a new location. Even the workers who get tested positive, right? How do they feel in hospitals or NCID, or even if they're moved to Expo or Changi Exhibition Center to recover? I think these are points where we can think of how using tech, it could be a way to connect, it could be a way to share with them about, some reassurances, and just really thinking about how to be better humans.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's amazing what you guys are doing. Was the response always this strong from the start?
I think I've been doing this for like 6 years, like doing tours and then starting random initiatives. So it's always nice to see people come together, but I think it's nicer to see this huge effort coming together in crisis. So not that I'm wishing for crisis to happen often, but I think it's really the true test, right, of our societies, like the hashtag SG United, is it really holding up? I think after this, after COVID is over, what is the new normal? Right? What is things going to be like?
Very important question. So have Singaporeans always had this perception of wanting to help this community that you stand for, or what was it like? Do you see any difference?
Well, I think we have come quite a long way with our role supporting migrant workers. I think previously it was a lot of assumptions of the migrant workers being dependent on us, that there are so many of them amongst us, but strangely, none of them are our friends, for most Singaporeans at least. And I think when you look at the meaning of a friend, in a globalized world, we have friends from different cultures, different ethnicity, different countries. But when we look at our own backyard, somehow, these cultural perspectives become a source of also xenophobia and hate and misunderstanding.
Yeah.
So I think really for us, it's really priming the people in this time of crisis to see beyond COVID, but really to look and observe at the kind of conditions that they are living, especially highlighted by the spread of COVID, which are perfect for these circumstances. So I think the role of the migrant worker is something that needs to also change, to be redefined. Is our economic success the key importance of what we want to prioritize in our lives, especially in COVID when you can't really go shopping. Yeah, consumerism and all that, the marketing and all that. It is something that it's a good time to reflect on.
Yeah. Well, I think this situation, although it's unfortunately, it definitely has given people a broader perspective on the situation that migrant workers are facing. Yeah. So how do you think Singaporeans can continue to support migrant workers through this time and even beyond that?
Yeah. So I think we have seen many people readily donating. The $600 that was given by the government, they donated from from even though everyone's facing quite harsh economic realities with pay cuts and zero income companies, and I think the realities of these Singaporeans actually exemplify and make it a bigger impact when they choose to give, as a really testament of our resilience. It's not easy to be in a bad spot and still give. And I think that's what we really appreciate from those who have given so far. I think the other perspective is how do we use our skills and talent for good. Our organization with this 170 volunteers did not come by chance, but it's actually a concerted effort from different people, different backgrounds, different skill sets to come together and want to offer them as a force for good. So it's not so much of having to go out on the ground and get involved, but sometimes it's really about looking out for your neighbor. It could be a family member at home, it could be your elderly grandparents, it could be your friends that are lonely, but recognizing that it takes a village to raise a kid. It takes a village to care for one another in order to actually have a very integrated relationships with one another, and we see that shining through in COVID. And I think for migrant worker friends, they are one of the many populations in Singapore which tend to be more isolated from our regular circle of friends. The other circle would also be the elderly. I think it's really an opportunity to also think of ways to engage them, because many of them may not be so familiar on tech. So I think for me, we've been doing this not so much of a migrant worker specific or elderly specific initiatives, but it's really the core of being human, right? What do we care about, and why should we even care? It's so easy to just work from home. I got no business. Let me chill out every day. But I think it's harder to say, let me do something to respond, and how do I help effectively in this war against COVID? So it really takes everyone coming together to not just support what kind of policies they are rolling out, but also volunteer. I think I take my hat off to the people at the front line. It's really not easy to be in the face of an invisible enemy. To be uncertain about what's going to happen next. A lot of these uncertainties do cause some cause for concern, but it's really how we look out for one another in comfort as well.
I think because this whole situation is so unprecedented and everyone is going through just a complete change. There's no normal anymore. And I think it's a great reminder for everyone to make the best of their time, step up where they can, and help others if they are able to. Yeah. You did mention that there are other NGOs and that your coalition has efforts to complement these other NGOs. Maybe if you could elaborate a bit more on that.
Yeah, so I think the reason why we had different coalition members come on board was the skill sets that they offered. So Migrant XME, for example, has a huge design for good component. So they are really the ones that are helping churn out the collaterals for mental health. looking at the designs of the different website and posters. And we also have a team of translators who are migrant workers themselves.
Wow, okay.
So these shared resources that we see happening, very communal. It's almost like, in a village where everyone shares food, in a kampong where we hear people open doors, and sharing of resources is not something new. But I think in this unprecedented time, that's really coming through a lot more.
Yeah.
So there are many helping hands on the ground, and I think it's also one of the effective ways to plug the different gaps that exist, especially in our different connections with different groups of people. And when the time comes, when there are some overlaps in terms of the service that we provide, then it's also a time to come together and consolidate.
Yeah.
So I think it really is like a wave, right, coming in and out, in and out. And I think that's how we really become a force that gains enough momentum and consolidates to create real change. So I think in the space of civil society and civil action, it is something that we've never really done on such a scale to respond to a crisis, but the civic duty of a citizen, I think, is what inspires us to do so.
Yeah. It's really like a prime example of how you guys are bringing together different skills
Yeah.
to support a common cause. I think that's amazing, and that more people should step up to do this also. Well, you did talk about it, but let's just elaborate one more time about how Singaporeans, say, like me and my colleagues, what can we do to help out this situation?
Yeah.
And also, what your coalition needs from Singaporeans. And the mindset that you wish that Singaporeans will continue to carry beyond this period of time.
So the analogy is like life saving. Like if you learn life saving, the first rule is don't jump into the water unless you can assure your own safety. So I think for many of us, we sometimes want to jump into things and help, but often it is without regard of ours or our loved ones' safety, or also about what they're going through. So actually the best way to help is to look at the people around you, support your family, support your friends, and reach out to them really. And I think the thing about COVID is that no one knows what everyone else is doing, apart from the social media accounts that we have.
Yeah.
The life that we lead is could be quite different from the reality of what we show and portray as well.
It's true.
So it's really about staying connected. We are socially distanced, but it doesn't have to be socially isolated. I think the notion of being human also is that we are social creatures, right? So it's how do we stay connected and also inspire one another to help out in greater means. So for our coalition, for example, we have had some groups that came together to organize like a photography sales where they sold the nice photos that they took to raise funds for the coalition, and we saw that as really valuable, show of solidarity, and also in terms of the priorities that they had in actually coming together for the purpose of supporting a greater cause. And I think that's really something simple that we can start with. There are many other migrant worker groups out there that are still fundraising as well. And also to look at the work that they are doing and appreciating how different skill set, different strengths can come together for a force for good. And I think our weakness is we are really too big to move. We are it is beyond me, to move how we have been moving. It's not a single effort at all. To be honest, the people who are leading the teams and overhauling the existing systems is unprecedented in terms of how we are moving as a citizens movement. And I think this is really a time where we need to get involved, get our hands dirty, get out on the ground. If you have the permits to distribute items, don't do it illegally. Make sure you have a movement permit. And really also to look at ways that you can volunteer your services, your skills, or your time.
Yeah. On that note, right, so where are the platforms in which people who want to volunteer and want to sign up, where do they look?
Yeah. So we're definitely looking for volunteers now. We have a warehouse space that we need help packing and doing the dispatch for the items that are being delivered there. We also are calling for volunteer drivers, driving because it's less social interactions, so it's a lot safer, we think. And we are looking to dispatch supplies all over the island to dormitories. So we just did a call out on our Facebook and Instagram.
Okay.
So be sure to look out for that. We have more opportunities as well coming up.
Okay, this is on the COVID Migrant Support Coalition Facebook page.
No, so all the coalition members, Migrant XP, Galen Ventures, Singapore Migrant Friends, we have been publicizing that on our own Facebook pages.
Okay. Yes, so everyone do check out the Citizen Adventures Facebook page for more information on how you can sign up and how you can volunteer. Yeah, I think it's a great time, it's a great place for us to wrap up. So thank you so much for sharing everything with us, Yinzhou. I think what you and your team and the entire organization and all the other NGOs, what you guys are doing is truly just amazing and inspiring. And I hope that this will encourage more Singaporeans to step up and help out where they can too.
My pleasure. It's a team effort. Thanks for doing what you do to Chow.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us on COVID Conversations, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye!